Let me know when. Hello, hello, hello. Jordan Sheridan live, Status Coup, Election Day here in the city of Buffalo. Uh, hope everybody's having a good day. Obviously, elections going on all over the country. But we've been here in Buffalo, focusing on the one here. Oh, I'm not in the StreamYard. Hold on. Uh, we have been in the city of Buffalo, focusing on the election here, which is, a very important election in my view. Um, we started out this morning, India Walton, who is obviously the Democratic nominee here, running for mayor. She uh, started out outside of a Salvation Army, which was a polling place. So she came to that polling place with a New York State senator. So we were there. Then we went over to another polling place on the east side of Buffalo, which is where she's born and raised, pretty impoverished. And boy, did we have quite the interview. Did I have quite the interview? Did I have quite the interview with um, a Byron Brown supporter? Byron Brown is the mayor. Hold on, I got something in my throat. Did we have quite the interview with a Byron Brown supporter, which we will definitely show you and talk about here. Turnout, from what I hear, is good, but at the different polling places we went to, we saw, a lot of Byron Brown signs. You see India Walton volunteers and supporters at the polling places. You see signs for other candidates that are running for county positions and other positions. So a lot going on. Thanks to Jordan, Jen, and Colin for this amazing reporting. Why, thank you, Andy P. In the super chat. And tonight we'll be going to India Walton's campaign event. It's late. The polls close here in Buffalo at 9 o'clock Eastern time. So the event will be around 10 o'clock Eastern time. It really depends. I mean, if India Walton wins convincingly, we should know the results very quickly. If Byron Brown wins convincingly, we should know the results soon after 9. And if it's a lot closer, we probably won't have the results very quickly or at all tonight. So I don't know. And I think it's kind of a coin toss at this point, what's going to happen, because, a lot of people think, a lot of people don't know exactly all the particulars here and all the context. And by the way, smash that like button in terms of, oh, well, she won the primary against the current mayor, so shouldn't she easily win the general election since she already beat him? Yeah, if it would be nice. It would be nice to think that way, but unfortunately, this is a brand new race for a lot of reasons. Number one, the mayor, who's been in office for 16 years and is your dime a dozen corrupt Democrat, he basically didn't campaign in the primary. Not to take away from India Walton's victory in the primary, because historic victory, her socialist beating a four-term incumbent, but he didn't really campaign. He basically slept through it and just took it for granted and took her for granted, and just assumed he would win very easily. So he didn't campaign. As a result of him not campaigning, a lot of his voters didn't come out because, again, if he's not going to campaign, he wouldn't even debate her during the primary. Why would they come out? And a poll that came out last week had the current mayor, Byron Brown, up by a significant amount. And part of, if you look into the poll, it showed 43% of those polled. It was a poll of about 600 people in Buffalo. 43% of those polled didn't vote in the primary. So one would have to think a good chunk of that 43%, a good chunk of that 43% was Byron Brown supporters who didn't vote in the primary. So not only do you have Byron Brown sleptwalk through the primary and didn't campaign, he's very much campaigning, very, very aggressively here. You have Republicans pouring in money to Byron Brown, including Trump supporters who have been pouring in $10,000 at a time. Real estate developers, big donors to Republicans, have been pouring in money to the current Democratic mayor to try and stop India Walton because she would stop this corrupt, rigged system of basically handing out real estate contracts to developers here, and basically giving them land and giving them precious land in Buffalo with, tax free, or giving them tax subsidies, or literally paying them, providing grants to them to build here. And that's called gentrification. So, making beautiful certain parts of the city while letting the rest of the city rot. So, we'll see what happens. I would love to predict to you what's going to happen, but I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And I think what I do know is, in terms of actual door-to-door knocking, India Walton's campaign has been strong. She has had a very, very strong volunteer base. Her campaign is all volunteer for months here, and they've been knocking in doors all over Buffalo. So if she loses, I don't think it's going to be for a lack of effort. And I don't think it would be for a lack of organizing in terms of the knocking in doors and canvassing. But Byron Brown, he's a 4-term incumbent, obviously has name brand recognition here, well funded. You see write down Byron Brown signs all over Buffalo. He's a write-in candidate because he lost in the Democratic primary, so he can't run as a Democrat. So that could affect things, the fact that he's a write-in candidate, because not every voter knows the details of a write-in. They don't know you have to fill the bubble and then write in the candidate. But I wanted to show you, because this is unique. In Buffalo, you can't use a sticker for the name, but you can stamp the name of the candidate you want to write in. So we went to the polls this morning. I was literally offered, like, right away, hey, do you want a stamp to write down Byron Brown? So if you could show that, Colin, that's what the stamp looks like. Byron Brown. Remember to fill in the oval, line up edge of box with arrows. So they're providing voters going into the polling places with stamps to stamp Byron Brown's name. But if you stamp Byron Brown's name and don't fill in the oval, it doesn't count, or it shouldn't count. We know, shenanigans can happen. So it is not as easy as just, oh, India Walton's the only name on the ballot, and you just fill out the bubble for her. With Byron Brown, you got to fill out the bubble. You got to either write down his name or stamp. And I should say, at these polling places, and we got 115 people watching, so smash the like button, share this live stream. At these polling places, it is illegal to offer people coming in to vote, to offer them anything, the stamps, to ask them who they're voting for, to tell them who to vote for within 100 feet. So it gets kind of blurry. We do know that Bill Clinton in 2016 didn't seem to follow the law when he was literally campaigning at a polling place in Massachusetts for Hillary Clinton inside. Election laws vary state to state, city to city, but in New York, you can't electioneer, you can't campaign within 100 feet of the entrance. So Byron Brown's campaign volunteers can technically offer voters going in stamps to stamp down Byron Brown's name outside of 100 feet. So it gets kind of blurry. But that is an added wrench that could help India Walton, because it could get complicated for some voters who don't know the rules of writing campaign or what have you. Another thing is, if tonight, if there are more votes for India Walton than actual write-in ballots, because it doesn't go by which candidate got write-in votes. It goes by how many write-in ballots there are, period. So if India Walton has, like, let's say 10,000 votes and there's only 4,000 write-in ballots, then we'll know pretty easy. We'll know pretty early that she won, because the write-in ballots would be for Byron Brown. So we'll see. From what I've heard, just from hearing from people, volunteers of Walton's campaign, other people I've talked to over the last days, is the turnout is pretty good here. In terms of early turnout, You have over 39,000 voters cast their ballot during early voting. Nearly half of that total, nearly half of that tally was made up of voters in the city of Buffalo. So early voting, which ended on Halloween and started on the 24th, over 39,000 voters just in this county, Erie County, New York, voted. And over half of the 39,000, so what's 39,000 divided by 2? About 19,000? Hold on.
Yeah.
I got it.
18,000.
Thank you. Colin the calculator. So about 18,500 or so of the 39,000 early votes was in the city of Buffalo. So that's 18,500 votes, presumably early votes in the mayor's election. And I think early voting would benefit India Walton. Doesn't mean that a lot of those early votes weren't Byron Brown, but 18,500 early votes for the mayor's race, not too bad. The Board of Election reports that 4,589 voters cast their ballot on the last day of early voting, which was on Halloween. So that's a pretty good number, just shy of 5,000. This early voting tally is way down from 2020 presidential election, so it's obviously going to be less in a mayor's race. According to elections commissioners, 167,000 people participated in early voting last year. Commissioners say 26,000 people participated in early voting in 2019. So if you compare 2019, which was not an election year, and 2021, 26,514 people participated in early voting 2 years ago, 39,000 2 years later. So there's an increase in early voting. Both were non-election years, 2019, 2021. Non-election years in terms of no midterm elections, no presidential elections. So the early voting, I would say, is good. Jordan, are you going to do a mini marathon until results finish coming in? You want me to go for, what is this? What are we at? 4 o'clock. So the results come at 9. So you want me on air for 5 straight hours? Listen, if I'm going to be on air for 5 straight hours, I have a demand. I need a lot more people to sign up as a Status Coup member, and I need donations. Speaking of, since that was a good segue, and by the way, don't go anywhere. I hope you're all on a full stomach because I'm going to show you an interview I did at a polling place with a Byron Brown supporter that, woo, I'm not even going to say anything yet. You just buckle up. Buckle up. I want to give some shout outs because we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 new members today. Holy cow. Henry, Christopher, Jesse, Dorothy Lee, Alexander, Michelle, Robert, Tom, Alareza, John, 10 new Status Coup members today. And by the way, yesterday we had 23 new Status Coup members. Reigning members. Did I mean empty stomach? You're correct. Sorry about that. I hope you're not on an empty stomach. So thank you to the 10 new members so far today. It's election day. Can we get 10 more? Can we get 20 more? You know the drill, folks. The only way we could do this important on-the-ground reporting is if we are funded by you. We don't take money from the banks. We don't take money from the fossil fuckers. We don't take money from big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, military industrial complex. None of that. Thank you for the super chat. Lore 3NZ. So here's the deal. We are now on day 14 of this 2-week reporting trip. We started out in Iowa and Illinois covering the John Deere strikes. By the way, so the sources I have are saying even though they reached a tentative agreement, it's a coin toss whether the John Deere workers are going to accept this contract. So stay tuned for that. I've been trying to follow, but kind of hard to follow the strike in Iowa and report on the ground here. But definitely, please consider signing up as a member. We need to get more members to continue our on the ground reporting. This is important. There's not a lot of other outlets doing it. So please, if you can, sign up as a member, statuscoup.com/fall. Sign up, statuscoup.com/fall. And when you go to that page, through Thanksgiving, we have a promo where if you sign up as a member, you'll get a free piece of Status Coup merchandise. $5 a month, you can become a member. We have other levels that are higher than $5, but you can become a member for $5 a month. And as a member, you get access to our bonus content, our bonus videos, all of that. and our monthly call through Zoom with our members, which we're probably going to do next week when I'm back. So statuscoup.com/fall. And if you could donate to this reporting, which is not cheap, flights, hotels, rent a car, food, equipment. We've been on the road for 2 weeks. When it's all said and done, it'll probably cost us between $6 and $8 grand. So statuscoup.com/donate. Before I get to the interview with the Byron Brown supporter, who basically told me that the 4-term mayor, who's been mayor for 16 years, is not responsible for the fact that Buffalo has the 3rd poorest city in the United Corporations of America. Let me repeat, Buffalo, 3rd poorest city in the United Corporations of America, 43% child poverty rate. She told me he's not responsible. You know who's responsible? Those lazy black and brown people. And I should say this was a black woman who told me this. Before we get to that, I want to play some of our reporting from yesterday. If you missed it, we covered India Walton's last campaign event. It was outside Eugene V. Debs Hall. If you know your labor history, Eugene V. Debs, legendary socialist labor organizer, one of the fathers, really, of the American labor movement, was imprisoned for his labor organizing and opposition to big business. So India Walton held her final campaign event right outside Eugene V. Debs Hall. Spoke with the head of that hall. Spoke with her communications director. Asked her a question or two. So wanted to show you some of that.
Can you kind of talk about? I mean, Buffalo. Listen, it's Rust Belt, deindustrialized. You've had a mix of all of the usual things, people fleeing out of the city for suburbia over the last 30 years, deindustrialization, industry leaving, and this mayor, Byron Brown, from what I could tell, kind of just selling the city to real estate developers and donors, making beautiful downtown and the waterfront, but kind of leaving the rest of the city to fend for themselves. Can you kind of talk about, I've been speaking to people and they're saying they haven't seen this kind of political energy and excitement and even concern in a long time.
Well, we're located in the heart of Buffalo's East Side, the Broadway-Fillmore neighborhood. This neighborhood has lost 85% of its population from 1950 to 2010. I'd say that very few neighborhoods in Buffalo and in the Buffalo area have seen as much decline as a result of deindustrialization and white flight and suburbanization and, frankly, disinvestment from City Hall. And I think that one of the reasons India Walton has captured people's imagination is that it's time now to refocus our energy on forgotten people and unforgotten neighborhoods. The poverty rate in Buffalo in 2006 is about 30%. The poverty rate in 2021 is about 30%. So
child poverty, 43%.
Yes, it's criminal. And we are not set up yet as a municipal government, as a state government, of truly tackling the core causes of poverty. And you know, the dirty S word has been used to throw India Walton under the bus, but I think we need to start questioning how our economic system is responding to the needs of everyday people and come up with different solutions if they're not working.
You know, what do you think in terms of people who have kind of got jaded by the electoral system? They see what's going on in D.C., which is a disaster. Democrats aren't actually following through on anything they promise. Do you think they should have hope in terms of local politics and candidates like India?
We always have to act from a position of hope and optimism, I think, to make any real progress. I think that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and indeed the socialist wing of the Democratic Party are simply invoking the positive, forward-looking message of FDR, which was enormously popular in his time. And he came along at a time in U.S. history when the needs were pretty substantial, but as inequality continues to grow, as people continue to miss out on the economic growth that is supposedly happening in our country, I think if someone like India Walton wins the mayor's office in Buffalo, the first time that a self-declared democratic socialist will have done so since the 1960s, then it would be the positive reverberations would extend far beyond Buffalo, and I would hope send a message to the Democratic Party that it shouldn't run away from the legacy of FDR and JFK and LBJ.
Everyone I talk to says there hasn't been this kind of enthusiasm politically in Buffalo for a long time. Can you kind of talk about just this enthusiasm and energy in a city that's long politically been deflated?
Sure. I mean, I think in general, the sort of candidate that has been on offer. Well, for the most part, there hasn't been a competitive mayoral election, I think basically since the 70s. Byron Brown has been in office uncontested for 16 years, which is as long as many people have lived in Buffalo. And, you know, he's like a pretty conventional, boring, mediocre, not exciting candidate who has just been a politician his whole life. He moved here from Queens. You know, he's from right down the road from Trump and Cuomo in Queens, some in the water.
Has a lot of Trump supporters bankrolling.
Plenty, and Cuomo, to say nothing of Cuomo. He was Cuomo's pal and close associate for a long time. So anyway, sorry to get off of that. He's you know, he moved here for college, and right out of college, he went into politics. He was an aide, and then he was a city councilman, and then he was a state senator and a mayor. So he's like very much a conventional establishment candidate. And India is a nurse. She's somebody who like has endured poverty, was a mother at age 14, escaped a violent, abusive marriage. Like, she just so much more resembles everyday Buffalonians who, living in a post-industrial city, have all endured things like that. And I think that just accounts for the excitement. She's brand new. She brings an energy to politics that hasn't been seen really in the country, let alone in Buffalo. Byron Brown's maintenance of the city, he has invested a lot of money in downtown luxury development and tourist destinations, and even in the affluent parts of town has not maintained basic infrastructure. So the base level stuff of like good public education, well-maintained city parks, good infrastructure, that is important to Little League parents in North Buffalo who's you know, have been long promised a field house at Shoshone Park, which has never arrived. And it's important to people in East Buffalo as well. So I think like, and when you're on the doors in affluent parts of Buffalo, oftentimes what you hear is that people are concerned about what's going on in East Buffalo.
Can you kind of talk about that whole thing? Seems very hollow, and the Democratic Party might pay for it later because he wouldn't gracefully accept the election. And now, even though she already beat him, has to run again now with him getting a ton of Republican support.
Yeah, Representative Ocasio-Cortez spoke on that very eloquently. She said it's a dangerous game they're playing. If you won't support the Democratic nominee and stand with the Democratic voters, what is there to, what power do you have? You know, AOC stumped for Joe Biden. Bernie stumped for Joe. Bernie did a rally for Joe Biden every day online for like a month. He did more for Joe Biden. He's currently doing more for Joe Biden's agenda in D.C. than the conventional Democrats.
And then Joe Biden.
The left took very seriously the imperative to defeat the fascist threat on the right when our candidate lost in the presidential, and I think that that corporate Democrats who don't reciprocate the same good faith are playing a very dangerous game.
If she wins here, what should be the message? What should people take away from that? A lot of people who have been kind of disengaged or deflated with electoral politics.
I don't know if like the victory itself is the thing to take away from. It's the governing style. That's what's going to be crucial. To see somebody who is from the working class, who's committed to the working class, and how they govern, how real estate development happens, how land use is treated, how resources are distributed, from somebody who has control over a major budget. That's the thing to look for.
There's been a lot talked about by Byron Brown about Buffalo's renaissance and things like that, but obviously you're focused on areas that have been left behind. Whatever happens tomorrow, do you think the focus on these areas that have been left behind, there will be, you know, kind of follow through with that, whether you're the mayor or he's the mayor, because obviously gentrification is now kind of at the forefront?
Well, no matter who is the mayor in January, communities like the ones that we're standing in right now have had a spotlight shined on them that hasn't been before. And I'm committed to continuing to do the work to make sure that we get housing for folks, that we get good living wage jobs. And I think that there are ways to do that outside of being in the mayor's seat. So I'll continue to work with advocates and broad-based coalitions across the city of Buffalo, the state of New York, and the country to make sure that we get justice for our people.
For the progressive movement, by and large, whatever you want to call it, because they've been focused on the S word here, do you think this has broader implications if you're victorious here for progressive candidates elsewhere?
I mean, I think it's already proven that, you know, progressive grassroots campaigns are viable. I think that the long-standing question has been, well, you know, your dreams are great, but can you win? And we proved that in the primary election, and I'm confident that we're going to prove it again tomorrow.
So that was just some of yesterday, where it was a real real special energy, I guess you could say. I know that progressives online and progressives just in general have been really hopeless and cynical and depressed and angry, and they just say to hell with it, everyone's corrupt and the electoral system, you know, why bother? But as a journalist, it is invigorating to see. I felt it when I covered Nina Turner's campaign, to see, because there were a lot of volunteers at this last event. There's been volunteers pretty much at every event we've gone to. It's invigorating to see people, whatever the term is, progressive, working class, candidates like India Walton are galvanizing people that for a long time have literally been checked out in their community, just disgusted by the, just corrupt machine politics in these towns. Colin, YouTube is making me donate to Status Coup. The unfair treatment by the algorithm is a danger to access to real reporting. Well, if you want to screw YouTube even more, skip the super chat, statuscoup.com/donate, because YouTube takes 30% of your super chat, if you didn't know. So if, whatever you want, if you want a super chat, that's fine too. But you could just donate to us directly, because we get much more of that if you donate through, I think it's PayPal, statuscoup.com/donate. I'm in a good mood, so let's not even get into YouTube, because I don't want to go on a 30-minute rant against YouTube. But I think what India Walton is showing is, A, you can run as a socialist. She might lose. But B, if an actual working class candidate comes, Cori Bush was a working class candidate, a nurse, a single mother. If working class people from their communities who literally pounded the streets as activists, India Walton was out there during the Black Lives Matters movement, post George Floyd. She's been out there during the pandemic. If working class people can run, they could galvanize people in their community to knock on doors for them, to donate for them. And you know what? We're not going to win every single election, but she already won the primary. I don't know if she's going to win tonight. There's a lot going against her. You got a four-term incumbent. He's been in there for 16 years. He has a lot of Republican money flooding in right now. He's got the media on his side. If you listen to radio and TV here, they're basically, on a crusade against India Walton. She is being hammered with the socialist term, which does scare people. She's being hammered with defund the police. I was just getting into it with somebody on Twitter who thinks the fact that India Walton said, or I said, yeah, you have to compromise as a politician, means moving to the right, or says, well, why should she tweak her message? Because she has tweaked her message during the general election. She has not ran on defunding the police. She has kind of underplayed the term socialist and tried to move off the topic. They look at this person I was going at it with on Twitter was saying, well, that's moving to the right, or, basically showing you're a sellout. She won the primary running as a socialist and running on defund the police. Well, not really. She was for defund the police as an activist. She didn't run hardcore on defunding the police to win the primary. You want to know why? Because in polls here, crime is a major, major issue, one of the top issues. In a poll that came out last week where Byron Brown was up over her by a decent amount, crime was one of the top issues. She's running on, yes, she is running on cutting the police budget, but not defunding the police. Colin, if we could, the Huffington Post article kind of shows on the police funding. Hold on. You got it? The Huffington Post article. So in a nod to political reality, Walton has taken steps to sand the left-wing edges off her image and agenda. The former activist who chanted "fuck these racist-ass police" through a megaphone at a rally against racism and police misconduct last fall no longer uses the word defund when discussing her plans to reduce police funding. Instead, she speaks about the need to meet voters where they are, even if they are not as woke as people steeped in progressive rhetoric. Quote, we tend to intellectualize a lot of our issues to the point of inaction. We do a lot of talking about what is the right thing and a lot less about the steps to get there. but Walton remains honest about her interest in fundamentally transforming the political system, even if those changes are not attainable in a single 4-year term. She's unapologetic about her election night remarks, blessing hypothetical primary challenges against other incumbent Democrats in Buffalo, while clarifying that it was not remotely a priority for her ahead of the general election. Quote, I have this campaign into a training ground for people who I have made this campaign into a training ground for people who are dissatisfied with leadership. So I want to move on to the police stuff in particular. Some of Brown's attacks, the Mayor Brown's attacks against Walton, have been unfair and inaccurate. For example, he said during the first debate that her proposed 3% increase in residential property taxes would cost Buffalonians with a $100,000 home $300 more in taxes annually. In fact, the tax hike, which she would phase in gradually and plans to use to shore up snow removal services, would cost homeowners an extra $30. Walton would also have the city refund revenue it collected from the now discontinued use of speed cameras in school zones, which she and other critics considered a regressive tax. Brown also aired a misleading TV ad about Watson's proposed reduction of $7.5 million from the annual police budget, accusing her of planning to fire 100 police officers. The 30-second spot featured mostly Black and female police officers, lamenting that as younger recruits, seniority rules would force the city to get rid of their jobs first. Walton, whose plan is based on a proposal by the left-leaning Partnership for the Public Good, promises that she would not fire any officers. She vows instead to find the savings by encouraging older officers to retire and reducing excess spending on overtime hours. So, cutting police overtime. She's also talking about building up non-police alternatives for mental health calls and traffic stops by basically having social workers show up for mental health calls and things like that rather than police officers, and not having police officers handling traffic stops. So she's not talking about defunding the police. She's talking basically about cutting the police budget by reallocating funds, getting older officers to retire, and giving them whatever benefits they've earned, and stopping police responding for mental health calls. But she's been hammered with defund the police. So she has tweaked her message in the general election. And you want to know something? If she ran on defunding the police, we probably wouldn't be here, because polls would have her down by 30 to 40 points. I think a lot of progressives want candidates to run a scorched earth national progressive message campaign, defund, wear their socialism proud. But in local areas, believe it or not, the media and the Democrats are very successful in scaring the living shit out of voters. And their term socialism isn't a winner in a lot of areas, unfortunately. It could become less of an issue if you get somebody like India Walton in there and she proves, oh, I'm a socialist and the city didn't burn down in a day. Oh, we were able to have success in governing socialist candidates if they win and become mayors or governors or what have you. So, some people say, oh, she's moving to the right or already showing she's going to sell out. No, I think she's trying to win. And I think progressives need to start realizing, like, we could have all these rhetorical discussions on the internet, but at the end of the day, if we're not actually winning office, what does it matter? And I'm talking about, this is, to me, even more important than electing progressives in Congress, because these are executive positions. So she would have direct control over the city budget, police department, and many things. And Joe Manchin can't do a goddamn thing to stop her. So, I think it's important. I don't know what's going to happen tonight. I really don't. Again, like I said at the beginning, it's a write-in campaign, the current mayor. So that's different. He's got to, voters need to know how to write him in. There's stamps involved where you could stamp down Byron Brown's name, which we showed you the image of that earlier. But what I do know, she has a really, really, really big volunteer army that have been knocking on doors for months. He's basically got 2 labor unions, both public sector labor unions that he has handed out favors to. They are knocking on doors for him. They are making calls for him. He's obviously got the name brand. Everybody in Buffalo knows him because he's been in office for 16 years. But we'll see what happens. Moving on, and I just wanted to give a shout out because we're getting more we got a couple more members. So shout outs to new Status Coup members that are signing up while we're live. 1 second so I could read out your name. And smash that like button, share this live stream. Oh, of course it won't load. Hold on, folks. There, it's not loading. I'll shout you out once it loads. I wanted to move on because we went to 2 polling places this morning. And one of the polling places we went to this morning, boy, there were right down Byron Brown signs pretty much everywhere. This was on the east side of Buffalo. And I ran into a woman by the name of, let me make sure I have her name right, LaCandice Durham. LaCandice Durham. And LaCandice Durham works for the city. She is the complaint clerk. So apparently she takes in complaints from residents. So she technically is a city employee. She ran in the primary that India Walton won. So she ran, I think she got like 700 votes or something like that. So she came in a very, 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 very distant 3rd place. But she was out there. And I asked, hey, could I interview you? I didn't even know if she was a Brown supporter, an India Walton supporter. And I think this interview, what would you say, Colin, was very interesting, to say the least. So I want to play this interview. We're going to stop it and start it a couple times. It is loading now, so let me... why is this like on my phone not working? Oh, here we go. Just got new member Martin's new Status Coup member. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 new members so far today. So be like the 11 and sign up. We need more members to sign up. You're not only supporting our on-the-ground reporting by signing up as low as $5 a month, you get stuff for it. As a new member, go to StatusCoupMember.com. That's StatusCoupMember.com. Click on member and you'll see behind the scenes videos, behind the scenes photos. So you get perks as a member and you get access to our monthly members call, which I'm probably going to do next week when I'm home from this 2-week on-the-ground reporting trip. But let's play this interview and buckle up.
Jordan, I am out here at a polling place in Buffalo on election day. I am here with LaCandice Durham, and you ran in the primary between India Walton and Byron Brown. So now you're out here supporting Byron Brown. Tell me, you ran in the primary, so obviously you wanted the job. Why Byron Brown over India Walton?
You know, Byron Brown, I never wanted to undo anything Mayor Brown did. I wanted to continue the progress he made and keep the city moving forward. I do believe it was time for a new face, but not any face. You know, Ms. Walton want to cut the police department. You know, we need our police, especially right now, you know, especially when crime is high, homicides is high. We need to work with our police department, you know, not divide the department. So Mayor Brown is for police is one of my reasons for backing him. Taxes. India want to raise the taxes soon when she come in. We're in the middle of a pandemic. She say she's for tenants, but guess what? Who's going to get hit with the higher rent? The tenants. So I do believe there's many other ways that the city can get revenue. Increasing the taxes most definitely is not it.
Well, how else are they going to get revenue? I mean, the mayor has basically handed real estate developers contracts tax-free, so it's starving the city of that tax revenue. So you see communities falling apart because of the lack of tax revenue.
You know what? I say hold people in position accountable. I believe a lot of the reasons why things is not getting done now is because people is in the wrong administration positions. You know, I do believe once we start holding department heads accountable, holding city employees accountable, start enforcing the ordinances that's on a book. So many, there's no one fines, you know, fines, fees. We see it every day. People not cutting their grasses, corner stores not cleaning up in front of their property. It's like a free-for-all. These ordinances weren't in place for nothing.
I just find it, the focus is on cutting the police budget, but there's not as much focus on the fact that Buffalo has the third highest poverty rate in America, and this man's been mayor for 16 years. Whatever you think of India Walton, it seems to me part of the big reason for crime is you have such poverty, and people don't. You're seeing development in certain parts of town, while other parts of town are just being left to kind of rot. So isn't the mayor kind of responsible for that tale of two cities?
To a certain extent, the county executive, their social services is just as important, making sure families have the resources they need. It comes down to parenting in a household, no control. Once again, child protection services.
Well, pause. Oh, God. Oh, God. I just can't. I can't. And, it's tough for me because I'm a white dude. I don't want to white-splain, obviously, to a black woman. But, yeah, first of all, the reason Buffalo has such a poverty rate is people aren't in the right administrative positions in City Hall. By the way, if you're from Buffalo, you know what I'm talking about. But I mean, this current administration, Byron Brown, has literally been hit with several corruption investigations for fraud and other things. So I don't really think the reason it's so high poverty here is because of people not being in the right positions, right? She said, something about essentially people not mowing their lawn, which was one of my favorites. Her talking about, to a certain extent, Byron Brown, the current mayor for 16 years. He's kind of in charge, but it's also about the family. So, like, there were kind of these conservative talking points trickling in about the family and, responsibility of the family. Well, the family and poor people didn't just decide to be poor. If you know the story of America, World War II happened. After World War II, white people were incentivized to leave cities like Buffalo for suburbs. They got government-backed mortgages in those suburbs. In those suburbs, corporations moved to those suburbs with, friendly corporate tax rates. But it wasn't the same thing for black people. Black people couldn't get mortgages in those suburbs and things like that. So black people were left behind in cities like Buffalo. And then, starting in the 1970s and the rise of neoliberalism, cities were falling apart because their entire tax base had moved to the suburbs. Well, mostly Democratic mayors decided, well, how do we bring investment back into cities like Buffalo? We're basically going to hand the city to real estate developers. We'll give them tax cuts. We'll give them tax subsidies. Hell, we'll give them money. Forget tax cuts. We'll just pay them to come and invest. And where do they invest? Not in communities like where I interviewed her, which was the east side of Buffalo, which is really, really poor, majority black part of town. We're going to try and lure in big business to downtown, to waterfronts. And we're going to give them money and tax, no tax, you don't have to pay taxes, none of that, to build up, rebuild downtowns that have basically been stripped to the bare bones with restaurants, bars, cultural centers, installations, cocktail bars, what have you, new sporting arenas. And when that happens, we're going to call it economic renewal, economic development. Is this sounding familiar where you live? And what about all the other parts of town that aren't getting any of this investment, where we have no tax revenue coming in because we're handing out the entire city, we're handing the keys, and we're giving tax cuts. We're literally paying, using tax revenue to pay these businesses to come here. So you're not going to have working sewer systems in certain parts of town. You're not going to have working transportation systems in certain parts of town. You're going to have potholes and roads falling apart in certain parts of town. You're going to have youth centers closing down because there's no funding for it. Social services gone. She mentioned social services gone. Well, why do you think social services are falling apart? Because there's no tax revenue to fund those social services. Why? Because the tax revenue is going, the companies that the current mayor is selling the city to don't have to pay any taxes. In fact, in many cases, the city government is writing grants, is giving those big businesses, is paying them to come and invest. So it really is a tale of two cities, not just in Buffalo, in Detroit, in Flint, in Milwaukee, in Cleveland, in Pittsburgh, in Gary, Indiana, name your city: Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York City. And like India Walton has said, they're not against development. They're not against investments. So like restaurants and bars, like that's not a bad thing in itself. It is a bad thing if that's the only place money is going. And they're trying to redevelop these downtown areas in major cities across America. By the way, Bernie is the only person that talked about gentrification on the campaign trail. They're trying to do this to essentially lure in college-age students back to these cities, young professionals, mostly white, back to these cities. This is exactly what happened in South Bend, Indiana, where Mayor Pete, the media pushed this nonsense. He brought South Bend back. Yeah, he spent millions and millions and millions of dollars and gave tax subsidies and tax cuts to companies to come in. And he made 5 blocks very beautiful in South Bend, Indiana. And from what I remember, he paid $26 million of city money to create a light show on the downtown waterfall, so it would light up at night. That's what Mayor Pete did to bring back South Bend, Indiana. And then the black and brown parts of towns, he literally bulldozed 1,000 homes in 1,000 days. So it's just a sea of empty lots in the black and brown part of South Bend, Indiana, just like it's a sea of empty lots on the east side of Buffalo. So I don't know this woman. I'm sure she's pleasant. I'm sure she's a nice woman. I'm not trying to disrespect her, but you're basically blaming poor people for being poor when it's government decisions, when it's government and an unholy alliance going, climbing into bed with big business that has kept them poor and kept them without social services and kept them without investment and job opportunities. Welcome new YouTube member, Dorothy. And let me see if we got any new Status Coup members here. Colin just signed up. New Status Coup member, Colin. So that makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 new Status Coup members today after 20-something yesterday. Please keep signing up. StatusCoup.com/fall. You can become a member by going to StatusCoup.com/fall. You can become a member for $5 a month. We do something a little different. We don't just come to you from a studio and just do hot takes all day on bullshit like the majority of the online commentators. We actually get out there and we give the microphone back to the people. For 2 weeks we've been on the road now covering the John Deere strikes. Then we came to Buffalo to cover the India Walton campaign. We've also spoke with Starbucks workers who are trying to form a union here, which would be huge. It would be the first union in the country for Starbucks, one of the biggest companies, not just in America, on earth. So that would be huge. Status Coup should be broadcasted at all airports across the country, not CNN. From your lips to God's ears. Hey, we would start with just being broadcasted on YouTube. If you've been noticing, YouTube has literally been hiding our channel basically for 3 years. It's a modern. Just listen to this, okay? And this is a good thing, but just listen to this. We have 121,000 subscribers, okay? Typically, we might go live back in the day to like 500, 600 live viewers. Recently, we've been going on the road covering these important stories. 150 live viewers, 200 live viewers. Our shorter videos might have cracked 300 viewers in an hour. So what happened? Crystal Ball and Kyle Kalinske were nice enough to have me on their podcast the other day. As soon as the podcast went up on Saturday, all of a sudden, our YouTube subscribers started gaining very quickly. We were losing YouTube subscribers every day. All of a sudden, our YouTube subscribers jump up. Our paid membership jumps up. And then Kyle posts a clip of the interview on Secular Talk, his channel. And what happens? Our YouTube subscribers jump through the goddamn roof. I don't know. I haven't looked yet, but I think we were up yesterday, like almost 2,000 YouTube subscribers in 48 hours. Why? Because those people on Secular Talk never see Status Coup on their YouTube feed. And it's not only that they never see us. When us going up, and this isn't the first time this has happened. This has happened several times. When Kyle has posted clips or done a segment highlighting some of our reporting, because he's done it twice, and now this where Crystal and Kyle interviewed me, which I really appreciate. We start getting a whole lot of comments under our videos. Hey, Jordan, you're back. You're back. Literally from viewers that watched me at the Young Turks over 4 years ago and are just seeing Status Coup for the first time. We launched Status Coup in 2018. Parts of Kyle's audience, huge parts, I assume, have never actually seen it on YouTube. So that is the level of suppression we have been dealing with. I know for a fact, it's not that people don't like on the ground reporting. It's not that people don't want to watch it or support it. Hell, who the hell else is doing it? I'm not saying that because we're so great. I'm saying it because it's true. 9 out of 10 times we go on the ground all across America, whether it's on worker strikes, water contamination. I've been to Flint 18 times. We got another big Flint story coming out soon. We've been doing investigative reporting on the ongoing Flint water crisis and cover-up. This is one of the biggest government cover-ups since Watergate. The media has forgotten it. They don't give a shit. Corporate media hasn't covered it in years. They're covering it up. We have stayed on it, but people don't see it. So how do you wake more people up if platforms like YouTube are literally rigging the algorithm to hide actual independent on-the-ground reporting? Which is why, A, thank you, Crystal and Kyle. I wish more channels with bigger platforms would have us on, but I'll take what I could get. And B, we need to grow our paid membership. We need to grow our paid membership because that's the only way we could survive despite what YouTube is doing. These trips, some people say stop asking for money. Well, if you have a money tree in your backyard that is not coming from a corrupt Democrat, but is coming from you, and you're not corrupt, if you have an endless money tree in your backyard or on your front lawn that you'd be willing to, lend to us from time to time, we wouldn't ask our audience for money because we would have an endless money tree. We don't. We don't take money from banks. We don't take money from the fossil fuckers. We don't take money from big pharma. We don't take money from real estate. We don't take money from Silicon Valley. We don't take money from the defense contractors. In the beginning of Status Coup, we had a tiny investment of 50 grand from a viewer who I met at a conference. 50 grand. You know how quickly that went out the door? Within a day, we bought equipment. So that's what we've had. Other than that, it's been you. Paid membership, small dollar membership. So keep signing up. StatusCoup.com/fall, StatusCoup.com/fall. And if you can't support us financially, that's totally fine. Just subscribe to this channel. Also, get on our text message list, StatusCoup.com/text. That way you'll get a text message when we're live, because God knows YouTube. God knows YouTube is not going to notify you when we're live. They never do. Getting back to this interview, because it gets worse. Let's get back to my interview with this Byron Brown supporter from earlier.
Stepping into the households, telling families what to do. That's the real problem. No control in the households.
He's the mayor, and you got 43% child poverty. So at a certain point, you might think India Walton's too extreme or whatever, but doesn't there need to be a new face if the things he's trying have not worked in terms of poverty?
Yeah, India is going to try to undo everything Mayor Brown did. I cannot sit up here and say he was a bad mayor, but sit up here to undo everything he did.
Tell me what he did, because I'm not from here, so I want to know. All I see is like real nice development downtown and by the waterfront. you know, a lot of focus there and no focus pretty much anywhere else.
Right around the corner from us is the Northland workforce. They're begging young people to come in and get a trade right now. It's right around the corner. When you leave from over here, right over there. They invested so much money for the people right here in this community. It don't make sense that people from not in the city is coming to advance their lives and careers when it was made for us, you know, so why not take advantage of it? You know, trades right now is a big need. You know, they're always going to be around. You know, they're paying good wages. So I do believe right here on the east side, the Northland workforce is here to build up our young people and build up whoever who want to be built up.
You don't think Mayor Brown has basically focused way too much on development downtown by the waterfront, a lot less investment on the east side, communities that are falling apart? I mean, we see the Republicans that are pouring in money to his campaign. I mean, whether you like Walton or not, it just seems to me this is your typical Democrat who's handed a city to real estate developers and then made it seem like it's a renaissance when I've been driving around. Most of the city is falling apart.
You know, we do need some more investments in the city, but you know what? We also need a development downtown. Our downtown still need a lot of work. You know, a lot of us, we go out of town and visit other places and we say, wow, we wish we had that here. So now that we finally is getting great businesses and great developers like Douglas Jamal, I mean, many other people would love to have him in their city. But you know what? He focusing on the city of Buffalo. So I don't believe all development is bad. I mean, that's how we get revenue. That's how we attract people. That's how we bring people here to Buffalo.
Unfortunately, the data shows it hasn't. I mean, it's brought real estate developers. It's brought kind of upper middle class white folks to downtown, but it hasn't helped the material conditions of working class people, black people, brown people in the community. So that's why, and it's not just here. I mean, you're talking cities all over the country that have real bad gentrification problems. It hasn't really lifted the wages and, you know, helped security for working class people.
I will say this, and I hate, you know what? It starts with us. You know, we can't always sit around blaming the other person. We all have the same opportunities like everyone else. I started from the bottom. I had Section 8. I had food stamps. I had Medicaid. I worked at McDonald's for 7 years. But it got to be up to you to decide you don't want that no more. Now I'm a homeowner. I took civil service exams to get a better job. It's opportunities out here. We just had to go after it. Or maybe we just had to better encourage, you know, it's opportunities out here. We can't continue just blaming someone for the reason why we're not.
Well, you don't need to blame, but you have the power to elect. So if somebody's been mayor for 16 years, it might not be completely his fault, but if poverty is the same as it was when he came in, if child poverty is worse, I mean,
I get what you're saying. It's mindset. It starts with the mind.
It sounds like you're blaming the people who are poor for not rising themselves out of poverty when the mayor has been basically handing city services, tax revenue, whatever, to wealthy donors rather than investing in those poor communities.
I won't say I blame all the residents, but listen, you know, I'm tired, especially the brown and black community. We're not, I don't think we're oppressed. You know what? India Walton will make us more oppressed. Being lazy. We don't have to rely on the government for everything. Okay, yeah, to get you to the next step, that's the goal. But you don't need to rely on the government for every single thing.
I'm just curious, because she's talking about a tax increase to help social services, youth programs, transportation, sewer, fix the streets. It doesn't sound like she's talking about like a massive tax increase to go towards,
But we're poor, right? So,
well, part of the poverty is those social services I talked about.
And once again, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Right now, we have homeowners fighting to get back pay. To come right in and raise the taxes, the residents going to hurt, the tenants is going to hurt as well. So to come in and say that, I think she really need to sit and think about that. Like I said, there's many other ways that the city can go about going to get money. Go out, start finding the businesses that's breaking the laws, breaking the ordinances, because there's a lot of them out here, that's just getting away with it. That's why the East Side looked the way it looked, because no one is held accountable. They getting money from the residents, these corner stores, and then you walk around, there's garbage everywhere. Find them. People who can't go outside and pick up the garbage in front of their house. Why can't they pick up the garbage in front of their house?
I'm a white dude. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to be respectful. I don't want to. Obviously, this is your community. What I think the East Side looks like it looks, not just in Buffalo, but Detroit, Flint, Milwaukee, Cleveland. The list goes on. Is essentially you have Democratic mayors, Republicans too, who have basically done nothing to invest and bring in industry to these communities. They've only focused on the downtown areas of these cities, the waterfronts in Buffalo. So you have areas being beautified, downtown waterfront. There's no resources or investment put into these other communities. So sure, mowing your lawn, things like that. But if you're only going to focus, not just in Buffalo, but if politicians are only going to focus on one part of town, you're going to have poverty in the other.
The mayor, we got new housing complexes developed right here around the corner on East Ferry across from True Bethel. We got new development going on downtown, new affordable townhouses. There's a lot of new homes being built as we speak, and he already develops new homes. So for us to sit up here and saying that he's not addressing low-income families, not addressing poverty, I believe that's false. Once again, it start with us. At the end of the day, once we change our mindset, know that we always talking about why South Buffalo look like this, why South Buffalo look like that. When I campaigned in South Buffalo, there was not litter on the street. You know who throw the litter down? We do. We can have the same things like South Buffalo, but it start with us. All we want to do is complain, and I mean,
whether you blame Brown or not, the data's the data.
Boy, what time is it? 4? Too early for the whiskey? I say this again because, I'm a white dude. Certainly not my intention to white splain, but I've been in enough communities that are majority black and brown, and I've spoken with enough black and brown people, and I can't ever claim to understand the black or brown experience in this country, but I can tell you what I've observed. This woman's out of her mind. Out of her mind. Kudos to her. Sounds like she came up from from next to nothing. Working at McDonald's, this and that. But when she says, we're not oppressed, I don't know if she understands the history of just the last 50 years in America, where, white people were afforded, where we were interviewing is the east side of Buffalo, majority black, really, really poor, a sea of empty lots. Colin was mentioning that she was referencing stuff and programs and houses that are being built right where we were. Literally, if you turned around, it was a sea of emptiness. So I don't really know what she was talking about. But the last 50 years, black people were not afforded the same economic opportunities as white people. White people were able to leave cities like Buffalo and move to the suburbs with affordable government-backed mortgages. Black people were not. There were racist rezoning laws, which black people who wanted to leave cities and go to suburbs to live in affordable apartment complexes were not able to, because suburban governments blocked them from building and moving into apartment complexes in the suburbs. This is all historical. You could read it yourself. When she's saying, oh no, it's mindset. Well, I don't know. If you are born on the east side of Buffalo, or not just the east side, but if you are born in a poor area, Buffalo, Detroit, Flint, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, Gary, Indiana, South Bend, Indiana, parts of Iowa, parts in the West, Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, the whole map basically has been gentrified, which I call economic terrorism. Well, let me ask you a question. If you're born into this gentrification, this tale of two cities, where you're born into parts of town that do not have adequate transportation systems to help you get to work, if they don't have social services, youth centers where you could go as a kid, YMCA's are getting closed down. So you don't have much to do. So what happens? You get into trouble. You don't really have economic opportunities because the only jobs that are available are low wage jobs, if you could even get those low wage jobs, because industry has left these cities. Buffalo, let me see if I have it. Yeah, in Buffalo, here's the Washington Post story. If you could go to a cone, several interlocking developments in the decades immediately after World War II. Several interlocking developments in the decades immediately after World War II put cities like Buffalo on the path towards gaping economic inequality. Federal policy encouraged working and middle-class white families to decamp to the suburbs with affordable government-backed mortgages, which is what I just mentioned. This, along with the relatively low corporate tax rates offered to businesses by those suburbs, drained central cities of tax revenue and relatively good-paying union jobs. In Buffalo, the losses were staggering. 1952, there were approximately 71,700 production workers in the city's manufacturing industry. Just a decade later, 41,000. So in a decade, they went from almost 72,000 to 41,000. 2002, 17,200 manufacturing workers remained in the city of Buffalo. So in a century, half a century, 71,000 down to 17,000. And that was in 2002. I don't know what the number is now, probably far less. Unable to take advantage of affordable home loans in the suburbs, many Black families were left behind, renting in deindustrializing cities, because it's not just that companies left for the suburbs, companies left for other countries. Thank you, Ronald Reagan. Thank you, Bill Clinton, NAFTA, and the Democratic Party, offshoring our jobs to Mexico, China. Hey, I want people in Mexico and China to have jobs, but, we also need people in America to have jobs. Black families were left behind, renting in deindustrializing cities with diminishing economic prospects. The federal government refused. Again, this is oppression. When she says we're not oppressed, the federal government refused to insure mortgages in predominantly Black neighborhoods, even historically affluent ones like Buffalo's Hamlin Park, severely limiting the flow of new investment. At the same time, suburban officials used zoning laws, I mentioned this, to preclude construction of apartment buildings that might have offered decent housing at affordable rents to Black families. So is this mindset, or is this literally the economic deck being stacked against you if you are Black? And by the way, I just want to broaden this out because honestly, as a white guy, and I grew up middle class. I didn't want for many things. I had a tutor if I needed one of this and that. So I am an observer. I did not experience these conditions. But what Black people and brown people have been dealing with for years, there's a lot of poor white people now starting to deal with that too, post 2008 and the global financial crash that stole our wealth. If you're a white guy or gal that used to be middle class that is now part of the working poor, many of you are now living in these communities that have been deinvested. So as white people left the suburbs after World War II, Black populations in northern cities swelled as more and more African-American families fled Jim Crow South. In Buffalo, between the years of 1950 and 2000, Black people went from constituting less than 7% of the population to more than 37%, with the overwhelming majority concentrated within the city's economically depressed and hyper-segregated East Side. So where we were standing, me and, Miss Pick Yourself Up, it's about mindset, stop being lazy. Where we were standing was the East Side, which had a major fleeing of white people to the suburbs where they got nice government-backed mortgages, but Black people were not afforded that same privilege. And deindustrialization happened. Now, this is the key. By the 1970s, business interests that still had a stake in central cities like Buffalo, particularly large commercial real estate holders, were desperate to stop the economic bleeding. They decided that their future profitability depended in part on the reorganization of local government fiscal priorities, specifically tax cuts targeting business and increased spending on public subsidies, i.e., tax revenue, public subsidies for private enterprise. By loudly asserting that such changes were the only way to boost local investment and create new jobs for residents, as well as by doling out increasingly generous campaign contributions, corporate executives and lobbyists won over municipal officials to this way of thinking, i.e., businesses who had money, instead of actually investing back in these communities, they said, hey, if you sell the city to us, if you give us tax kits, if you give us subsidies, hell, if you give us money, pay us money, which is what Pete Buttigieg did in South Bend, Indiana. He literally gave tax revenue paid to lure business in, paid them to come from Chicago and other places into South Bend, Indiana. Ever since, city, county, and state governments have rapidly expanded the menu of incentives offered to businesses in exchange for maintaining or increasing investment, including direct grants, property tax breaks, and the transfer of public property to private firms at well below market rates. But these corporate subsidies, shocker, failed to generate significant, widely shared economic growth as promised. They did, however, make it more difficult to fund basic services that poor urban residents depend on, including schools, road and sidewalk maintenance, and public transportation. As these services decline, the reputation of cities like Buffalo also deteriorated. In Buffalo, snow is also another one that's been underfunded. You kind of need really good, timely snow plow removal in a city where it's going to start snowing soon, folks, and heavy. Municipal leaders responded by rebranding urban centers as trendy places for professionals to work, live, and play. This has taken many forms, including advertising cultural amenities like new sporting arenas and touting the knowledge economy infrastructure, such as hospitals and universities. At the same time, local officials have promoted forms of community based on shared consumption patterns at trendy restaurants, chic cocktail bars, and pricey musical festivals. This gentrification has gone hand in hand with the hyper-policing of poor and working class neighborhood. Intensified surveillance combined with a lack of affordable housing has exacerbated the displacement of low-income families. So, I don't know. I don't think it's a mindset. I don't think this is a mindset problem where these poor people, it's in your head. If you just wake up tomorrow and say, my material conditions, the lack of social services, the lack of transportation, the lack of youth programs, the falling apart streets, no snow plow removal, no jobs in the communities I live, forget all that. If you just say in your mind, you'll make it, then you'll make it. Yes, here is the link to the article somebody asked. Again, I don't have a problem with her. I'm sure she's a lovely person, but she's living on another island. And by the way, she's a city employee. And also, I just want to mention something which is kind of says everything. As I was broadcasting this, somebody text messaged me who's watching this. I won't mention who said, the Brown supporter who you interviewed mentioned Douglas Jemmell, as a developer doing good for the community. So she was talking about companies that have come in and invested in the community. The developer is Douglas Jemmell. Well, Jemmell was convicted of fraud. Gotta love it. So the company that she's saying is wonderful and doing great for the community. Jemmell was convicted of fraud and pardoned by President Trump. Jemmell donated $5,000 to Brown, the current mayor, as did the executive vice president of Jemmell's company. So this is the company she was talking about that's doing so wonderful for Buffalo, the company that was convicted, or the head of the company that was convicted of fraud and pardoned by Donald Trump. So it's just a mindset, folks. And I got to tell you, I'm not black, but when she's talking about, people are lazy, this and that, no, people are starving. They're not lazy. They're starving because mayors like Byron Brown have literally handed city government over to developers. And by the way, I'm not against developers. So, for example, in a lot of the cities that we have gone to cover stories, we sometimes book hotels in downtown. Why? The hotels are decent. I like restaurants. You like restaurants, Colin? You like bars? Okay. We like restaurants. We like bars. It's cool. There's nice murals in some of these communities. I'm not against it. Who doesn't like, eating at a nice restaurant or, bars and cocktail bars and sporting events? That's not the issue. The issue is when you are literally sacrificing one community to beautify another so that you could lure in upper middle class or young white professionals to move in to those communities, downtown areas. You should, if you are an elected official, governor, mayor, you should literally be invested in every community. You should be trying to lift every community. But you're not, because they're all bought off. This current mayor, Byron Brown, who's doing the write-in campaign, has had several corruption scandals in his administration within the last 16 years that he's been mayor, many of which were tied to former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who had to resign in disgrace because he sexually harassed and, it seems, assaulted a lot of the women who worked in his administration. So, it's crazy to me that India Walton won the primary. She defeated him fair and square. Yet he's able to run again as a write-in campaign. And literally he's pushing a message, which if you listen to local radio, which Colin and I have been listening to the radio as we drive around here, if you watch local TV, they keep pushing this message of the economic renaissance in Buffalo, Buffalo's revival. It's the same shit, different day. It's not a revival. It's one part of the city that has been revived, while the rest of the city is begging for working transportation, for working sewage systems, for community centers not to get closed, for mental health services. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything before we play the rest. Oh, I want to give a shout out, couple more. Welcome new Status Coup member Jeff. Welcome new Status Coup member Donald. I hope I pronounced your name right. Welcome new Status Coup member Mike. Welcome new Status Coup member Donnie. Welcome new Status Coup member Colin. So that makes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 new members today. 16 new members today. Keep signing up, statuscoup.com/fall. Let's get to 20. By the way, tonight we'll be at the India Walton campaign event. Like I said, I don't know. I don't want to lie to you. I don't know what's going to happen. If she wins, it'll be an upset. Even though she won the primary, she's got everything against her. The current mayor has Republican money flooding in. He just got $10,000 from Carl Palladino. If you know Carl Palladino, major Trump guy, big real estate developer, infamously in 2018 openly said his wish for the year was for President Obama and Michelle Obama to die. I'm not a fan of Obama. I'm not wishing for his death. So he's got Trumpers on his side pouring in money to him. He's got the media on his side. So we'll see what happens. But it's important to be here. It's important to cover the fight, win or lose. The fight, local candidates. The fight of these workers on strike. John Deere. The fight of these Starbucks workers trying to form a union. The fight of these Mercy Hospital workers who are on strike. We interviewed them the other day. We've been doing the important reporting on the ground that, frankly, do you see a lot of other outlets doing it? Because I sure don't. I don't. And I love when people are like constantly texting me while I'm live. Like, check the channel. I'm live. For the people texting me right now, asking me questions. So let's move on to the rest of the interview, because if you thought it was bad, stay tuned.
Of a difference, but make the city go backwards. She's scaring people away. She want to mandate the city, the vaccines, just like New York City. We're going to be a hot mess. So I'm just hoping and praying people make the right choice.
Last question. just in terms of democracy, because a lot of people don't understand, because like he lost the primary, she won, yet he's running as a write-in candidate. If it was the reverse, let's say you won, or you lost the primary, or India lost the primary, but then you wrote a write-in campaign. I mean, the Democratic Party here would be, howling that you're not accepting the results of the election. So do you think it sets a bad precedent for the future if people who lose in the primary then don't accept it and just decide to run?
Democracy, sir. That's exactly what it's called.
Democracy. He lost the primary in the Democratic primary.
What? Everyone deserves to get out and vote, just not Democrats. Republicans have a say, conservatives have a say, Green parties have a say, libertarians, whatever party you, independents, they all have a say. My best friend is an independent. She couldn't even vote for me in the primaries. So with that being said, everyone have a voice. If the majority wasn't happy with the outcome of India Walton, Mayor Brown have every right to get out and start this write-in campaign. He have every right. It's called democracy. And if I still wanted to continue to run, I have that right. It's called democracy. Ben, Taniqua Simmons, Miles, they all have that right. If they feel like we need better choices and more choices, they have that right. It's called democracy. Why should we have to settle when the majority feel like she is not the best candidate?
Well, the majority of Democrats did in the primary. You're talking about Can I do the interview, ma'am? Thanks. You're talking about Republicans being able to have influence in the general is what you're talking about.
Everyone should have a say. About 11,000 people, I think, maybe voted for India Walton. Come on. I mean, we got how many people living in the city of Buffalo?
Well, the turnout in the mayor's race in 2017 was only 16%, so it was low then, too.
Well, if someone wanted to do a write-in back in 2016, guess what? They would have had to write as well. It's democracy.
And lastly, tell the audience what are the biggest problems here in Buffalo that need to be addressed?
I do believe that probably the crime, most definitely the homicides. I'm tired of seeing families on the news crying, having to bury their children. I think that's the biggest problem, not feeling safe. You should be able to go outside, play in your front lawn without, having to worry about being shot down in your front yard.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Absolutely.
So, first of all, I personally would be for getting rid of primaries altogether. I would be 100% fine with just one election. What's the difference? 4 or 5 months? I'd be fine with no primaries. I think in 2016, Bernie won. Majority of the open primaries where independents could vote. So I'd be all fine with getting rid of primaries because I think it is the majority. However, the system we have primaries. So let me ask you a question. Do you think if Byron Brown won the Democratic primary, let's say by 1% over India Walton, let's say Byron Brown won the Democratic primary by 1%. Let's say Byron Brown won, I don't know, by 800 votes. Do you think the Democratic Party or people like her would be saying, hey, it's democracy? If India Walton then ran again in the general as a write-in candidate and actually built a competitive campaign as a write-in candidate, you think that's what they would be saying? No. So it's democracy when it's convenient for them. It's democracy when it's convenient for them. And basically what she's trying to say it in a nice way that comes out like democracy, what she's actually saying is, he should be allowed to run again so Republicans could actually put us over the top. Republicans who literally want to vote for him and block her only to keep these fat development contracts going to them and to keep accelerating and putting the gas on this tale of two cities. So what she's talking about isn't democracy. Of course, she should be able to write in as a write-in candidate and Republicans should have a say. No. He wants Republicans to have a say because Republicans are the very people, not all Republican voters, but certainly the Republican donors that are pouring in money. And a lot of the Republican voters. Republicans want to say because they want to stop anyone India Walton or anybody else that's actually going to invest money in like poor communities, that's actually going to stop this corrupt system where city halls and mayors just literally hand keys to city hall to real estate developers, political donors, corporate lobbyists. That's what they want to stop. It ain't about democracy. It's about patronage. It's about corruption. It's about keeping the new Gilded Age, i.e., gentrification, healthy and smooth operation. Yeah, she does have a democracy for us, not all attitude. Because to me, until we get rid of primaries, which I'd be all for, and just have a general election where independents could vote, Republicans can vote, Democrats can vote. Hell, you could be non-affiliated and vote, and just whoever gets the most votes wins. Until we have that, we had democracy. She won, he lost. He decided not to really campaign at all. He took it for granted. He just slept on India Walton and just assumed he was going to glide easily to victory. He lost, and he wouldn't accept it. Hey, Joe Crowley, who lost the AOC, he didn't write a write-in campaign. He went gracefully into the night and became a lobbyist. Why can't Byron Brown? So they don't care about democracy. They want to stop her. And frankly, the woman I interviewed, I didn't know it at the time. I'm not from here. She is a city employee. So she's a city employee. Maybe she's out there for Byron Brown to kind of move up the ladder. I don't know. But hey, I'm a white guy and I'm offended on behalf of black people having to listen to her lecture people on, oh, it's a mindset issue. It's just a mindset and don't be lazy. It's really a shame that, you know, I'm all for disagreement. I try to be respectful. I try to challenge, you know, by the way, these people are not used to being challenged. And I don't know, you probably couldn't hear it, but pretty much throughout the whole interview, there was a woman next to Colin as he was shooting, just, I mean, giving her commentary on what I was saying and talking at me and saying how I'm not a journalist and how I'm lying and blah, 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 to the point where it was hard to listen to what she was saying, the woman I was interviewing, because this woman off camera kept on interrupting. So finally I had to say, hey, you know, I'll do the interview. Thanks. And she kind of quieted down after that. That happens a lot, by the way, because frankly, most people are not used. It's like a unicorn. They're not used to actual journalists doing anything other than softballs and doing anything other than stenography. They're not used to it. So when they see it, it's very triggering, and a lot of them don't like it. So further proof that this isn't a racial issue, but inequality. You know, to me, I don't agree with people who completely separate race from the equation and say it's a class issue. No, there is a racial component, because the bottom line is black people were not afforded the same things as white people. And if life is a race, black people, white people have had a full 5-minute head start. So I'm not somebody, what is the term, a class reductionist or whatever. I do focus on class, and I think a lot of poor white people are more and more, that light went out, Colin, more and more beginning to fall into the same bucket as poor black and brown people. With that said, there is a racial component because what I went through, the historical redlining, after World War II, racist mortgage policy where white people were able to get mortgages, that government-backed mortgages, black people couldn't. Black people were not able to move out to suburbs into apartment complexes because laws were written that forbid apartment complexes, low-income apartment complexes from being, went out again, low-income apartment complexes from being built. With that said, the University of Tampa School of Journalism should be renamed Jordan Sheridan School of Journalism. Where I went to college, thanks for looking it up, I didn't have a journalism school. But if it does want to rename something after me, I won't be against it. So it is a class issue, because honestly, poor white people, poor black people, poor brown people, we're all kind of fall. But to say there isn't a racial component or black people passion over them, that's just not true. That's not true at all. Great work, Jordan. Can't afford to support at this time, but hope you get the support you deserve. That's share these live streams, press the like button, spread the coup. Word of mouth does matter. And another important thing you can do, costs you nothing. StatusCoup.com/text. Sorry if I just went dark. One of our lights went out. StatusCoup.com/text. That way you'll be in our text message list and you'll get a text message when we're live. Because YouTube 9 out of 10 times does not send you a notification when we're live. So StatusCoup.com/text. So let me tell you what the rest of the day is looking like. We are going to have India Walton has the polls close pretty late here. Typically, in a lot of places, polls close at like 7 o'clock, 7:30. They close at 9 o'clock here. So polls close at 9 o'clock. India Walton's having an event at 10 o'clock. I'm going to go to that event. I don't really know what the situation is because it seems like the campaign has her supporters separate from the press. Obviously, I want to interview her supporters, but it seems like they're putting the press in a separate room, which I don't quite understand. But anyway, we're going to go anyway. We'll see what happens. Hope we plan on going live, even if it's just me from a press room, kind of talking about what's going on. And yeah, that's the deal. So we'll be live it again a little bit. I want to read some super chats, give shout outs to any new members that we got. John, $5. Democrats mandating I get the jab. I lost my job, but I should reward them by voting for them. They could shove it 20-term midterm style. Yeah, I mean, where I stand on the vaccine, I'm fully vaccinated. I don't believe in a government mandate, like the government having a law that says you have to get vaccinated. As far as private businesses, I mean, sorry to tell you. Well, let me say, the government mandating their public employees, so like New York City putting in their vaccine mandate, that I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. I'm not for a government mandate, just the government mandating all citizens get a vaccine. I think you should get vaccinated, but that's up to you. If you don't want to get vaccinated, it's your choice. But yeah, if you don't want to vote for Democrats, that's fine. I think there's been a lot of misinformation and propaganda out there about the vaccine and a whole lot of other things about COVID. And I unfortunately think COVID has become a left-right issue when it's really a public health crisis. That's my opinion. Lore 3N, $5. Here's your donation. Why, thank you. MHC must have changed. Tip $10. Jordan, what do you think about the general idea of elections from the local level to national having a certain number of mandatory debates? Admittedly, I don't know all the details of how it could work, but I'm tired of local races in which I have no idea who anyone is and candidates who only decide to show up to debates when it benefits them. I think for all races, you should have at least 4 or 5 debates. And frankly, I don't think they should all be hosted by journalists and media outlets. I think activists should be moderators too. I think candidates should get direct questions straight from the community, activists, actual residents, rather than corporate journalists who basically do propaganda for usually the corporate establishment candidate. So I'm all for mandatory debates. There were 2 during this campaign. One was at like 9:15 in the morning, which I didn't really understand because like people are at work. So who's watching a debate at 9:15 in the morning? But I'm all for mandatory debates. Sandra, new YouTube member. Woo! Thank you, Sandra. Colin, $5. Thank you. Colin, $5. 5 hours. Let's go, Jordan, and let's go, Brandon. Boy, did you see Joe Biden falling asleep in Scotland? He's at this climate. Is it in Scotland? I think, or Glasgow. I don't even know. He fell asleep at the climate conference. Pretty symbolic of America, falling asleep as the planet burns and helping the planet burn. Colin, €5. YouTube is making me donate to Status Coup. The unfair treatment by the algorithm is a danger to access to a reporting. It's more than unfair treatment. YouTube is fighting an information war, and they are waging war on actual independent, on-the-ground reporting. It's not a coincidence that this channel, Kyle Kalinske, who talks about how badly his channel has been suppressed, he openly said Status Coup has it worse than anyone. It is not a coincidence, folks, that actual on-the-ground reporting, not just commentary, but reporting out there on these important issues, strikes, communities that have their water is poisoned, Flint and other communities we've covered. Stories, Black Lives Matter, we've covered many black men assassinated long before George Floyd. We were the only ones that actually went to Dallas in 2019 when Botham John, a 26-year-old black man, was murdered just hanging out in his apartment by a white cop who just accidentally walked into his apartment and shot him, mistook his apartment for her apartment. We went down to Dallas and covered that. Botham John did not get the George Floyd coverage. We went down there. They don't want to show any of that. They don't want to show we've covered environmental fights against pipeline. They don't want to show we've gone to Amazon in Staten Island and covered those workers trying to form a union in Staten Island. Every time we even cover Amazon or put it in the headline, we get further hidden. So there's an information war going on. And that is why it's super important if you have the means. If you don't have the means, if you have the means, it is very important. Sign up as a member, statuscoup.com/fall. If you sign up as a member through Thanksgiving, we're doing a promo where you could get a free piece of Status Coup merchandise. So statuscoup.com/fall. And by the way, to all the new members that have been signing up today, yesterday, the last few days, go to statuscoupmember.com, statuscoupmember.com. Click on member, and that's where you see our content just for members. We got bonus videos that we shoot on the road for members, photos that we kind of take photos on our drives and where we go. So you could see kind of that behind the scenes flavor of our road trips. And as a member, you get access to our monthly members call, which I think we're going to do next week when I'm back through Zoom. So that's through Zoom. It's always a good time. Myself, Jen, Colin, and I look forward to answering your questions on this reporting trip. Andrea P donated $50. Don't listen to the haters. Keep moving forward. You all have built something very beautiful, and I thank you for it. Andy P. Well, I thank you, because Andy P, unfortunately, there's a whole lot of haters out there. A whole lot of haters on Twitter, on YouTube. And you know what I find really interesting? Talking about the haters? All these haters live on Twitter. No offense. And all these haters comfortably opine and pontificate from wherever their studio is, usually where they live. They love to hate, but none of them actually want to go out and do anything. They don't want to actually go out on the front lines and speak with these workers. They don't want to go out on the front lines and do journalism. No, that would be too difficult. But they do want to pontificate and be Twitter warriors, bitching at us because status quo. We don't tell them what they want to hear 24/7, or we don't agree on all things politically. So I don't know. I'm a very simple person, professionally and personally. I've always believed this. Actions speak louder than words. I'll let our actions speak for itself, because as far as I know, we're the only ones actually out there covering these important stories. So thank you for the donation. Cheryl, $10. She sounds like a Clyburn voter. Oh, so well put. You're so right. Dorothy, new YouTube member. Thank you. Das Fleisch. 9.99 euros. Status Coup news should be broadcasted at all airports around the country, not CNN. Let me tell you something. If we were on all airports around the country, you'd have a radically different country. You'd have a radically different American electorate, and you'd have a radically new way of thinking, in a good way. If there is a God, I hope he hears that. All work and low pay. New member on YouTube. Welcome. Primisthetic, $5. Jerry Wanayak, $5. Presents, $5. I got some 45-year-old scotch for you, brother Jay. Cheers. Can I tell you something? I'm 35. I've never had scotch. I'm a whiskey man. I've never had scotch. Colin likes tequila, but I'm open to scotch. Never had it, but I would try it. Thank you for the offer. Paul Najaro, new YouTube member. Thank you, Paul. D Nord, $30. Whoa, news that we need to hear that entertainment, mainstream media will not cover. Thanks, Jordan. Why, thank you. Dade Murphy, new member. Welcome to Status Coup. Fractal Wolf, $10. Keep up the excellent reporting, dude. Huh? Oh, wow, I misread that. Fractal Wolf, $100. Holy cow. Sorry, I misread that, Fractal Wolf. Thank you so much. That's really generous. $100. Thank you very much. Keep up the work, you say. I will. By the way, thank you to Colin too. He's behind the camera. He's been working night and day with a lot of pain in the ass requests for me, editing wise and graphics wise and all that. So he does great work and has been with me on this road trip for 2 weeks. I also want to give shout outs before we go. And by the way, we're going to be back tonight. pretty sure we'll be live as results come in. Be prepared. I mean, we might be looking at a loss. So be prepared. We might be looking at a loss. We also might have an upset. So I don't want to lie to you. I don't know. I just genuinely don't know which way it's going to go. I think it's possible this current mayor wins because he basically sleptwalked through the primary. He didn't really campaign, and he took India Walton for granted, and she won. But he has been campaigning in this general election. He's got a lot of money behind him, particularly from Republicans that have been pouring in money. The TV ads, the local radio ads, they have been hammering her with socialism and defund the police. And unfortunately, those things do work. Unfortunately, those things do work. So India Walton does have a pretty big campaign volunteer effort, knocking on doors, and people powered can work too. AOC won in 2018 because she had a really amazing ground effort. And India Walton and her volunteers have been knocking on doors for months. So that could make a difference here. It could be the difference. But I want to give some shout outs before I go. Make sure we didn't miss anybody. New Status Coup member Danielle, new member John, Jeff, Donald, Mike, Donnie, Colin, Martin, Henry, Christopher, Jesse, Dorothy Lee, Alexander, Michelle, Robert, Tom, Alareza, John. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 new members just today. I know we could get to 20. I know we could get to 20. So we got 18 new member signups so far today. And hey, proof's in the pudding. Your membership is paying for this. Where tomorrow is the last day of the trip. Well, today is the last day of the trip. We've been on the road for 2 weeks, but there's a whole lot of other stories we want to cover. And frankly, no one else is doing these kind of stories on the ground and this in the field reporting. We need funding. It's a lot. It would be, trust me, it would be a lot easier to just accept like $1 million from some Democratic Party donor to fund us. A lot easier. Republican donors too. Be a lot easier to take a massive investment from like some lobbyist or real estate developer or tech entrepreneur. I wouldn't have to work as hard. We'd have plenty of money to go out on the road, but we certainly would not be able to report on the things we report on. We would certainly not be able to tell the kind of truth we tell, and we would basically become a shell of our former selves. And we're not going to do that. So we do it the harder way, and we do it the righteous way, and that's through you. So I don't take it for granted. Everyone that's been signing up as a member, super chats. Also, people have been donating, so let me not forget them. Oh, yeah. Okay. So thank you for watching. We're going to take a dinner break. We should be back tonight a little bit after 9 o'clock Eastern. The polls are going to close at 9 o'clock Eastern. So we should be live between 9 and 10 with the results. However, whatever the results are, we'll be live. And thank you for your support.